Hey, what's up guys? This is a Reeve and Cozy that has a little bit of lockstick issues, meaning that if I want to release the lock bar here, you can hear it probably. It's a little bit uncomfortable and a little bit, the lock is just sticky, which is not a bad thing necessarily, right? Because if the lock is a little bit sticky, it's more secure, it won't fold as easily on your hand. If you would put more pressure on there. This is, like I said, a Reeve and Cozy, so it has the ceramic ball in there, which I'm not sure if you can even see that here. Let me get a flashlight. So it has the ceramic ball, which will be also used soon in the Sebenza 31 model and is also used in the Reeve Sound. And I'm not saying that this method for fixing this problem is not also going to work with other knives as well. I just know for sure that it works on this knife. At least on my knife, I should say, to be more specific. So, the ceramic ball that's in here is, I think, at 97 RC, which means this ball in here that rides against the blade is harder than the blade itself, which is at about 59 HRC, 59 to 60 HRC, and you can see by this line back here probably where the ceramic ball is wearing on the blade. On other titanium frame locks, it can be that the lock itself is softer than the blade steel, which would make the lock wear over time, which would end up in the lock traveling this way, which it also does here. But yeah, either your lock will wear out over time or your blade will wear out. So one of those things naturally is going to happen with any frame lock, unless you have a steel insert and the steel insert wears out, which you can replace. So yeah, how do we fix this issue? So first up, let's check how much lockup we have. It is a little bit more than it was at the beginning. You can see the harder I release the blade, the more lockstick I get. Meaning, if I constantly flick this knife, I cannot do it now because my pivot is too tight. If I constantly flick this knife open, this will result in more lockstick because the blade hits harder. The blade and the lock bar hit harder against each other, meaning this travels more into this direction, meaning we get more stick. Like I said, it's not necessarily a good thing, it's just not pleasantly to just not a pleasant experience to use it. So that's the first thing that may solve your problem. Just open the knife like this, slowly and easily, and you will immediately notice that you get less lockstick from it. But still, you will still have some lockstick left. So first, make sure that all your screws are tight, which I can already see. This one is a little bit loose, which is part of the problem. Your screws need to be tight in order for this knife to function correctly. If your screws are tightened down and you still have lockstick, I would release loosen up all the screws and also the pivot, then tighten down all the screws and then tighten the pivot. Tightening the pivot is very important if you have a lockstick problem because as you can see here, this is my lockup right now, right? Now if I put pressure, if I release the lock, see that again, how far this locks up. If I release the lock, and now I put pressure on the pivot, which would be the same if I would tighten down the pivot. Now if I put pressure here, the lock doesn't engage as much into this direction. And, do Do you hear that? So now I have normally open it, see how much it goes all the way to this side. And now if I press down on the pivot again, actually the lock doesn't engage as far, and we also get like a less lock stick. Do that again. Hear that? In comparison to this. And now if I press down. So tightening the pivot is very important. Of course you shouldn't over tighten the pivot, because that's also not good. But yeah, the pivot and the body screws are your solution to this problem. I would also actually release the lock first and then tighten the pivot, and that will result in an earlier lockup. And see, we have less lock stick than before. If all those things don't work with first loosening the screws and the pivot, and then tighten down the screws, and then tightening the pivot of course in this position, not with the lock engaged. See how easy this goes now? And if this all doesn't work, I would actually take something. For example, here we have some plastic stuff. Don't take anything too hard. Don't definitely do this with steel or something like that. Take some plastic and rub it against the line where the ceramic ball is already wearing, because there could be rests of steel, because the ceramic ball is wearing away your steel. So make sure you rub it here. Whoa, do you hear that? No lock stick at all anymore. So yeah, first loosening the screws, then tighten the screws, then tighten the pivot in this position, and then if that doesn't work, rub against the line where the ceramic ball is already wearing. Now we have no lock stick, zero lock stick at all. Blade centering is perfect, no lock stick. Yeah, so I did this, I rubbed against here with some plastic. If that even doesn't work, I would take some very fine sandpaper, but be very careful, because you could definitely, if you damage this this angle here too much, if you remove too much material, then you're also gonna have a problem. You're gonna have way too much. The lock would be even traveling more into this direction. So yeah, that's how you fix the lock stick on the Reeve knife, and maybe on some other knives as well. Just a quick little tip. Thank you guys for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.